Alright, so I'm out in the shop, about to start working on a new sign project, but figured I'd make a little video to show you guys kind of what goes into the process of that. Morgan's done most of the design process on the computer. I've got a couple of things that I need to clean up, just really maintenance things before getting some of that design over to the CNC. So the first thing I've done is I have that MDF quartered. The dimensions of the sign already have pre-measured out. I've got two of these foldable DeWalt tables, which I absolutely love for sawhorses. I clamped it down with some armor tool clamps. Got the Makita track saw with the clamp down, and I've got it measured out. So basically what I'm going to do next is I'm going to connect the Makita track saw. I have a battery powered version of that, and I'm going to run it along the MDF here to cut, split this sheet, and then I'll cut the sheet the other way to get the width of the sign. The MDF, we use that for our lettering, and then put a good coat of primer on it, spray paint it the color that we want. Normally gives us a pretty good sheen. So I'll try to go through that process as well as we go through this. So for now, I'm going to jump over and get the track saw, get the dust collection set up, etc. So the dust collector that I have here, it's get this from Home Depot. It's called a dust topper. It goes on top of a 5-gallon bucket. Connects to your shop vac, and then I have an exhaust hose that I'm gonna shoot all the dust, heat, everything out under the garage door. And then I have the vacuum plugged into one of these RF remote powered splitters. So you'll see remote. Works great. They have, vacuum's getting rough. So we got it cut. Now I'm just going to get everything disconnected. Release these clamps. Switch the positions here. Put one here. Put one here. So that's all I'm going to need the track saw for, so I'm going to go ahead and put that up. So got the MDF cut. The next thing is going to be to get the CNC set up, ready to cut the letters out. Morgan and I built this. It's tabletop. It helps with dust collection. MDF throws a lot of dust. This kind of helps maintain it, keep it all contained. Plus our dust boot helps that. And then this also helps to quiet down the CNC as well. So one of the coolest features here is we've got the shocks to help lift it. So we got these cheap LED lights out of off of Amazon. Work off of switch. They work off of voice control as well. Got to get that set up. I don't have it set up yet. So got that done. And then the next thing is this face can be removed. A couple of screws. This gives me a good working area. Easy to get in here, do what I need to do. Alright, so the next thing we're going to do is get the vacuum cleaner hooked up. I'll show you in a minute, but there's a dust collection system in here called Suck It Dust Boot. It sucks up the dust, throws it in the vacuum cleaner. So this is the exhaust hose I was telling you about that runs outside. I have a power set up over here to where basically what it'll do is it drops the power to the vacuum cleaner. That way it's not as loud. Runs about half speed and helps. It doesn't need to go full speed to get all that dust up, and it keeps things quieter here in the shop. So. Alright, so this is the Suck It Dust Boot system I was talking about. It allows the dust to get sucked up through here via this. But yeah, I'm going to get the MDF put in here. Alright, so I've got the MDF laid down on the spoil board, and just as an FYI, I have the Ben Myers cam clamps and threaded spoil board here. If you guys don't know about Ben, go check it out. Ton of great content, very available, easy to use. The next step is going to be to get the CNC ready and going. So I'm going to back the camera up a little bit and talk through that process. Alright, so I have the computer hooked up here. I've got an old Mac Air 2011 here running carbide motion. The only thing I do with this computer is run carbide motion on it. I don't design, I don't do anything. Matter of fact, I typically turn the Wi-Fi off. That way there's no updates trying to go on. I've got the USB connected power here. My enclosure, I have a router and a Shapeoko. Design flaw here, I have to hang the dust collection hose out. Otherwise, I don't have enough room in the back and it gets bound up. So I'm going to connect the cutter, have it home. So next step, going to move the end mill up to the front and replace what's on there. There's a 125 on there now, and we're going to replace that with a .062. So the bit we're going to use is a Bits and Bits DF062 up. The 062 is the diameter, and the up would be an upcut. So we're going to send all the dust and shavings and everything up so that the dust collection can grab it and suck it out, especially with MDF. Want to try and always go up, because if you're pushing those chips down, they can get hot, dull your bit, possibly catch on fire. Once again, back to my buddy Ben Myers, Bluetooth keyboard. Can look him up. Did a really good, he's one that made me aware of this. So can control your Shapeoko via Bluetooth keyboard. Alright, so here what we're doing is moving the dust collector, the Suck It Dust Boot out of the way, and installing our Bits and Bit upcut bit, getting that tightened up on the router. Alright, so the next thing we're going to do is do a zero. So I like to use their touch probe. Basically what's happening here is the router's going to go over the touch probe, and there's a little circle in the lower left hand corner of the touch probe. We're going to set this thing up so that when the touch probe goes down, or when the bit goes down and touches the touch probe, it sets the depth of stock and the lower left bottom portion of the stock piece as well. Side note, don't forget to connect your clamp to the bit. I 3D printed this holder I keep inside here. The next thing is going to be to put the dust boot back on. So alright, so I've got the front door panel on. The next thing I'm going to do is I have some Wise cameras and have a mount here so that I can basically watch the CNC while it cuts. That way I don't have to babysit it the entire time. Alright, so this is the Wise camera. It's got a magnet mount in here and then a little metal plate that it comes with. It comes with one of these, which I have mounted right here. That'll allow me to mount the Wise camera. And then this guy, it's so low voltage, I just power it by the computer. I've got the camera hooked up. Just looked at the Wise app to get my preview lined up, and you can see it's fairly real time. It might be hard to see. Alright, so the next thing we're going to do is get this guy ready to go. So one thing I will say, we can go through this a little later on the enclosure, but I have the dust collection hooked up to where when I turn the router on, dust collector should fire up. I turn it off, dust collector turns off. So you'll see, I'm going to turn it on now. You'll see when I shut it. So I run everything through the cloud. So whenever I do my designs on one computer, they show up on this one via the cloud. So just wait for that to download for a minute. Alright, so let's jump inside the enclosure using that Wise camera I was talking about earlier. You'll see I have this thing set up, and then I'm just kind of bouncing back and forth between the Wise camera and the DJI that we have set up watching on the outside. But the footage is good, it's got good coverage, I'm super happy with it. But mainly, in addition to creating these videos, I really like to use that camera to monitor. If something happens, I have the shape hooked up to a Wise plug that can be controlled from anywhere, so I can just shut the whole thing down immediately. Alright, so next step in the sign is gonna get some stock down from up above. Gonna cut the background size down, get those cut and put together before they get painted. I got the board spool down, about to start cutting them. So we'll speed this up and kind of cut through these boards real fast. So one thing that I like to do is I don't cut very straight with a circular saw, so I like to use a framing square. And basically what I do is I get my marking line, and then I throw that framing square on the board as a guide so that I'm cutting straight each time. So I just make a little mark down at the bottom and then line up the framing square with so that the saw hits the mark, and it really speeds the process up. Here I'm just measuring the background out just to make sure that it fits right, and then I'm marking where I need to split this last one. Alright, so got all the heights cut on the background boards. Now the width's 29.5, and basically what that does is it requires, in order to get that width right, you're going to have to rip this board. I prefer to rip it on the table saw. Gives you a straight cut, much straighter for me than if I try to use a handsaw. Using the saw stop, a lot safer way. If you don't know about saw stop, look them up. Wiener test is where it's at. Alright, so here I'm just sanding the rough edges down to get ready to tie these boards together. Alright, so it's time to get the sign out here. Get this thing opened up. Turn off of it. Alright, so here we have the MDF set up to do some sanding. I love this Ryobi cordless sander. Don't have a bunch of cords following you around, but we also have this hooked up to the dust collector. I'm going to sand this down to 320. That way it gives a nice clean finish when we're painting. And then in addition to that, I like to sand it while it's all connected. That way the pieces aren't flying around before you cut them loose. Alright, so here we have the multi-tool where we're cutting the tabs off the back. So these tabs basically keep the pieces from coming loose while the cutter is cutting it. So have to jump around and cut all of these tabs loose before we can move on to sanding the edges. Alright, so here I've got the Ryobi cordless router set up and just trimming the tabs off of each piece. These tabs are the tabs that we cut off of the previous frame, which hold the pieces all together. So cut these tabs off, then jump over and sanding edges down to 320. Alright, so here I'm just hand sanding the edges using a 220 sanding pad or foam sanding block. Getting all the edges sand down as smooth as I can to set them up for the primer. This is really important so that in the next phase, whenever we primer these, that the primer sticks well and you don't have to do a ton of sanding after we lay the primer down. Also, another little tip that I found from Dave is to set this blower up. That way you can blow all the dust off that you sand it off during the process. Alright, so getting ready to do a little painting on the letters, and learned this primer tip from my buddy Dave over on IG. I'll work on tagging him, make sure and see you guys over his way. But basically, first thing you want to do is have some little trim pieces like this, just whatever scrap wood you have. And then you're going to take and put some painter's tape. I just have the cheap stuff from Home Depot, doubled around so you have the sticky side here so that you can stick the letters to it. And one thing to remember is to roll some double sides, flip it over on top of itself and stick the tape down to the wood. That way when it's painting it doesn't slide off. So you'll see I do always like to make sure that I'm putting the right side down. So, yeah, you'll see here, it got the letter stuck. So I'm just going to do that to all the small pieces. The big pieces can just sit on the table. So, alright, so what I've done here is take a couple of my folding tables and wrap them in this paper. I have found that I don't want paint all over the top surface of the table. So the next step we're going to do is start primering. And you'll see basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to, if this is the piece, I'll get all the edges first and spray as much as I can and really soak those. Then we'll come back and do the top. But if you go the reverse order, then you get a ton of runs in the top. So. I also like to draw a line to mark my can. That way I know where I'm trying to spray from. And one thing I do as well is hit all the edges first, because when you sand it, it's going to roll some over to the front, and you want to hit that loud. Alright, so the next step here is to paint the background white. So we use all these reclaimed boards to give them a little more character, but basically what we want to do here is completely coat each board with a good coat of white. That way you don't have to hit it with a second coat. So we paint all boards and then on the edges as well. Alright, so what I'm doing here is I'm framing the boards. I'm getting the frame boards around the outside of the backdrop. Holds it all together, plus kind of ties the rustic look in with the white or the farmhouse look. Hey Loretta, hey babe. So yeah, so you'll see getting those measured out, sanded over on the isolating sander, which I'm a big fan of that rigid machine. Once I get these measured right, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the cordless DeWalt pin nailer, and I'm just going to start pin nailing these. So I don't really glue these down just because these signs are not meant for direct water exposure, so the pins should hold fine. So we'll wrap up the rest of the frame and move on to getting the letters in. Got the glue bot here, and what I like to do is try to use wood glue on the whole thing. And if there's something crazy, I'll get in there with some super glue, or Star Bond to be exact. And one thing I already forgot, that I told myself I wasn't going to forget, so I was going to go through and clean some of these tabs up. That way these letters wouldn't get stuck. But one thing a lot of people don't realize too is wood glue is stronger than the actual wood itself. So you glue two pieces of wood together with wood glue, try to break that bond, the wood's going to break before the wood glue does. One cool thing that a lot of people don't realize about this glue bot, what's cool is you squeeze it, it comes out, and then when you let go it sucks the glue back in, so you don't get that drip. I've had this thing for over a year. It's worked great for me. Some people complain that the gaskets in here wear out, but I haven't had that happen yet. Maybe I'm just not doing enough. And like if you squeeze too much on here, you can actually suck it back in the bottle too. Pretty cool. Alright, so we're just going to finish gluing in the rest of these letters. It's kind of a tedious process, but you just want to make sure and get good coverage, but not too much, because if you put too much glue on the stuff, it'll run out and start getting a little messy and discolor the painted backdrop. Just have to push it down everywhere. Looks like we can. This is that spot where the board is higher, so just gonna hopefully let this stick. And we'll remove the negative for the reveal.